The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia. Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And you are with us with the infamous Eric Paulsen in the house. Hi.
Hi, thank you for the very kind introduction.
If you all don't know who is Eric Paulsen,
It's impossible.
It's impossible. He's the executive director of Lawyers for Liberty. Of course, today we are going to talk on something that is closer to his heart rather than Jakim, which is about death in custody. So before we start the conversation about death in custody, what exactly is death in custody?
Well,
just to give a bit of background definition.
Well, when we speak of death in custody, we are mainly concerned with police detention. So when somebody, is arrested by the police, whether in the mainly in a lockup, but it could also be a situation whereby somebody who is arrested outside, but on the way to the lockups, and then further he's being remanded. So while in the custody and care of the police, he, for whatever reason, just dies. And for a long time, this is a serious issue in Malaysia.
But why you're concerned with the issue related to death in custody? What's so serious about this?
Well, I would think this is like the most serious form of human rights abuse in Malaysia. I mean, no one has a right to take the life of another person, and certainly not the police force. And what else can be worse than you being in a custody of the police, and then you die during their care. So whether through neglect or negligence, or sometimes through torture. So this is the reality. It happens in other countries, but I'm concerned with what's happening in Malaysia.
But this is supposed to be against the law in Malaysia.
Or is it not?
No, it's definitely unlawful for the police to kill somebody in custody. But unfortunately, because if somebody dies in custody, who knows about the issue? What is the evidence that is available, and who leads the investigation? In all these cases, the investigation is done by the police themselves. And I can say from experience, and of course working in this area for a long time, most of the time the investigation is not transparent. It's less than, it's not very impartial. And most of the time they're not interested to really find out the truth. And I would say that they would go in so far as to minimize the culpability of the police.
If you can give a statistic, how serious is it, the issue related to death in custody?
Well, over the last few years, the numbers have dropped. We are talking about, on average, about 10, 15 per year. Earlier in when I started activism in 2002 to 2003, we are talking about a much higher number. We are talking about double or triple the number. So but of course you think that a reduction is a good thing. Technically it is, but that shouldn't be the criteria, because no one should actually die while in police custody. You can look at other countries like New Zealand or in England. Hardly anyone dies in police custody, and every time it happens, it's a big scandal. It's a national scandal, and there are very real investigation, and people be held accountable. But unfortunately, in Malaysia, even though the numbers have reduced, every single death in custody should be a national shame, and unfortunately in Malaysia no one is held accountable.
And you're right about that. When you say 10-15 per year, people might look at that number and say, hey, that's not so much, like we're better off than other countries, especially countries that are less developed than us. But how do you make people aware of how bad that still is, although it's 10-15 per year?
Well, put it this way. I mean, we have a case of A. Coogan. This happened several years back, I think 2006 or 7. I mean, this is one of the most shocking death in custody in recent memory. Basically, was tortured to death in the Subang police station,
which is nearby.
Yes, Subang Jaya police station or Taipan, I'm not sure. And then basically there was a cover up. The pathologists covered it up. I mean, this is all in the court's record, and in fact, the pathologist was actually, the lawyers lodged a complaint against the pathologist. In other countries, the pathologist would have been struck off from the roster, and he can't practice, medicine. But here in Malaysia, he was only given a caution, and he's still a pathologist.
Even until now.
Until now. So, the police, even before this investigation, basically said, that the Gugan died from water in the lungs, or he drank water and collapsed. I mean, and then, there was a second post-mortem. Basically, it showed clear signs of torture. So this case, went on quite a bit for a long time, and, towards the end, the family had to sue the police. The High Court was very strong, and the Court of Appeal was very strong. Basically, upheld the suit for the family, and awarded hundreds of thousands of damages.
And what about the police?
Well, the police, what happened was there's one person who was charged. He was basically, according to him, he's the fall guy, because obviously there were more people involved in his death, but somehow he was the only one who was charged. So yeah, I mean, that's the situation in Malaysia. So if someone has to be made accountable, normally it would be 1 or 2%, but most of the time, people get away scot-free.
But why in Malaysia you have to wait until the family press charges against the police to uphold the rights of the victim? Why don't the government create mechanism to address the issue whenever there's any death in custody?
Well, the main problem in Malaysia, and I suppose the same for other kind of countries, because when a death in custody happens, it is the police themselves who investigate their colleagues. So what we have here is something, it's a phenomenon. It's not just in Malaysia and elsewhere. They would call it the blue wall of silence. So basically, everybody would just shut up. So the police themselves are not really interested to investigate, and even during the investigation, nobody would say anything, and nobody will see anything unless there's CCTV evidence. So in some cases there have been CCTV evidence, so therefore at least the evidence is stronger. But even with CCTV evidence, in some of the cases that we have done, the police, we can say they're not very serious.
So for you guys, it's actually harder for you guys to find evidence or get people to speak out about this issue. Would it be? Yes,
because at the end of the day, we are not investigators. We are lawyers, and we work on evidence that is available. So what happened is, in most cases, because investigation is led by the police, and basically most of the time they will come to the conclusion that it is either natural causes, suicide, or some cause of death that is not the fault of the police. So and of course here the pathologist plays a very important role, because at the end of the day, if there's a body, it's really up to the pathologist to do a very good job to make sure that that this particular person died in custody. So therefore the pathologist must be able to think in that context, that there are suspicious circumstances, and therefore they have to be trained to think dirty, in the sense that it's possibility that this guy was beaten to death instead of natural causes. So unfortunately in Malaysia, a lot of pathologists, because a post-mortem can only be done in a government hospital. So of course I'm not saying that all government hospitals pathologists are biased, but I would say that many of them err on the side of caution. Unless there's a very clear case of beatings, a very clear case of torture, if there's opportunity for them to err on the side of caution on the police, I would say that in my experience most of them do that. So so most of the time there's no further action, but because there's outcry from the public, outcry from the family members, outcry from lawyers, because how can a young man without any history of medical illness suddenly just drop dead, heart attack? They say heart attack or for whatever reason, but it could be a heart attack due to the stress that has been imposed due to the beatings. Sometimes they have inquests. So inquest is a format whereby it's more of an inquiry held by a coroner. It's the same in other countries. So it's to call all the evidence to find out exactly what happened. So there's no prosecution. So, but the same problem persists in the sense that we still depend on the police who have done the investigation. So the inquest could take place a year later or 6 months later, or sometimes it could be a few years later. So whatever investigation has already been done, and so by the time when the inquest comes, there's no further investigation, and it really depends on what has been done by the police, and most of the time it's not satisfactory.
I see. So you, as part of the Lawyers for Liberty, before your organization was formed, were there any organization that specifically look at death in custody?
Well, for a long time, there are individual lawyers, who have taken up the case.
It was mostly like loosely based sort of individual lawyers.
Yes, in individual lawyers, and then some of them, they still work with us, but it's just that now there's a organizational support.
Were the cases more severe than today when it comes to the statistic as well as the way the police handle criminals or would-be suspect?
I would think that because of the work by lawyers and other NGOs over the last 10 years or so, we have created an awareness that on the part of the police and the authorities that death in custody is not acceptable. So and I think by and large, I think treatment by the police to detainees in general that has improved. The number of death in custody has lessened. So I would like, we would like to think that it is due to our work and Suhakam and Swaram and other lawyers. But still the situations are serious. There should not be a single death in custody.
Last year alone, how many cases that Lawyers for Liberty handled when it comes to death in custody?
Well, currently we have I would say about four cases. So
a majority of them are from which state?
Our cases are all within Selangor and KL. So there's one case in Negeri Sembilan, so quite high profile case. So two matters actually that comes to mind. So one is Karunaniti. This guy was basically beaten to death. The pathologist came back with a post-mortem report that said that he got almost 50 injuries. Wow. But nonetheless, the cause of death, strangely, said he died from fatty liver change, so liver disease. So this again, as I gave you the example, you have 50 injuries, but the cause of death is something else. So it's very, very strange. Another person, quite a high-profile case, which I'm currently handling. Suguma, this guy, he basically went berserk, outside, and then in the process of being arrested, somehow or other he was stripped naked. He was arrested by members of the public and the police, and then there was curry powder smeared on his face. So this is Suguma, one of the most high-profile cases that happened, I think 2 years ago. And then the way he was arrested, so quite shocking. Stripped naked with curry powder smeared on his face, handcuffed to his back, 2 handcuffs, very, very strange. And the police say he died of heart attack. So and which the post-mortem said the same thing. So here we have a very quite a shocking situation. Somebody can be in the situation and he died in public while under arrest, naked with curry powder smeared on his face, while handcuffed to his back.
Very, very strange sort of
Yes.
death.
Very, very shocking.
Yeah.
So caused quite a big controversy, but yet no one is held accountable. So even in these two cases, very, very shocking deaths. So far, no one is held accountable. So the inquest is ongoing. So we shall see the outcome of the inquest.
But it also shows that the police forces in Malaysia seems like they have they have the liberty to actually act like a mafia. If I were to put it in that sentence, that example.
Well, while I wouldn't go it so far to say they're mafia, but in the sense that they are above the law for such cases. Very, very few, as I said, over the last decades or so, we are talking about hundreds of persons who have died while in custody, and very, very few policemen have been held accountable. Even if there are policemen who have been charged. Even recently, Dharmendran, another Indian person, died. This one, he was clearly tortured. Cause of death was clear, blunt force trauma. He even had staples. Staples were still on his body, on his ears and his ankles and so forth. So clearly he was tortured to death. 4 policemen were charged for murder, which is quite unusual because that has never happened before. So we were very happy. But nonetheless, the prosecution and investigation, we felt that they were not done up to par. Because of that, the court had no choice but to acquit the 4 police officers. So so as I said, so even if there's a charge, they do tend to get away.
That's very, very sad in a way, because it seems like there's no justice for the victims for the death in custody.
Yes, I would agree with that, and sometimes it would seem that the only avenue left for the family is to take a civil suit. But of course, that is a totally separate thing, because basically you are trying to get compensation from the police and the government. It doesn't, the perpetrators are not punished in that sense. Most of them are still police officers. They're not disciplined. They're not demoted. They're still police officers. So quite shocking state of affairs.
Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, we will discuss more with Eric Paulsen on the issue regarding on death in custody.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And we are back again with Eric Paulsen to talk about death in custody in Malaysia, in fact. So, you gave example earlier on the cases that you handle, and I can't help but to see the victims all came from one particular race, which is Indian. Is there any conspiracy theory they only target Indians, or those who die in custody? Do they fit a certain profile?
Well, I mean, it's death in custody affects everyone. So, in fact, I would say that the according to the stats, the actual number of death in custody for Malays, they're actually higher. But of course, proportionally to the population, it is true. There are more Indians who actually die in custody compared to any other races. Chinese also die in custody. The reason why some cases tend to get more publicity, unfortunately for Malay men who die in custody, because of cultural and religious beliefs, I think many cases do not go as far as the Indian, because they would like to bury the body as soon as possible according to the religious beliefs, and that mostly their attitude is that, look, this is fated by God, so there's nothing else to be done. So which is the wrong thing, because no one should actually die in custody. As for the people of Indian origin, I think over the years, because it's happened a lot more to their community than others, and of course they have been empowered by Hindra, for example, and some lawyers who's been working with them, and I think among the Tamil press and the politicians and lawyers, they have raised awareness among the community. So I think the community themselves feel empowered to raise the issue more every time there's a death in custody. As for the profile as to who are these people who normally die in custody, I would say that most of them are from the lower class. People who are less educated, people who might be petty criminals, or somebody who could be alleged to be a criminal. So if you're a suspect for criminal breach of trust, or if you are somebody who's a dato, or somebody investigated for fraud, or
a lawyer,
for example, if you are you will not be treated, if let's say you are a petty criminal, if you're somebody who is less educated, somebody from a lower class. So then if you're a suspect particularly especially for violent crimes, then basically you're in
trouble.
You're in trouble, and you're more prone to such incidents.
I see. That's interesting, because I would assume that there are certain procedures for police to investigate and get information out of suspects or criminals. Are they allowed to use violence towards suspects when they interrogate them?
No, definitely not. I mean, you can't torture.
What is the actual ethics of police when they do investigation or when they interrogate suspects?
Well, I mean, police is they're tasked to prevent crime. They are tasked to maintain law and order. And of course, if there's a crime that happened, then they're tasked to investigate the crime. But of course, you're not sure who is actually the perpetrators, and of course, they have to arrest X number of people, and then you have to find out whether this is a correct person. So everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
But it seems like that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, the police might think that they have the right person, but in the process of investigation, they have to use modern methods. They can't go back to the bad old days of basically beating a confession out of them. So the police must move on with the times. More modern methods of investigation, forensic intelligence, and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I would like to think that the police is getting more advanced in their investigation techniques, and not to just rely on brute force.
But it seems that people also generally don't know their rights. Like Arlene mentioned earlier, like if I were to be arrested now, I wouldn't know what's the next step, or like what is going according to the procedure and what is not. Because even if we watch, like for example CSI, they seem to know right away, like, okay, I need to talk my lawyer, or I'm not saying anything. But in the Malaysian or maybe in the Asian context as well, we're not too clear about that.
Well, if you are arrested for whatever reason, you should always get a lawyer. I mean, with due respect to the police, when it comes to criminal investigation, it is not a joke. Of course, you should cooperate with the police, but at the same time, you have a right as an accused person to defend yourself and to not incriminate yourself. So even if you are guilty, so to speak, you still have a right to not incriminate yourself
and to not say anything.
For example, and you still have a right to get a legal representation, and you still have constitutional rights. And the police, they can basically beat the confession out of you, and whatever investigation that they want to do, they have to do it lawfully according to the laws that give them the powers. So of course the police have their role to play, lawyers have a role to play, and then of course the courts have a role to play. So the police by all means investigate, but do so properly. And then, once you have the evidence available, and you feel that your case is strong enough, then by all means charge them in court. But what they can't do is basically, conduct themselves so as to cause oppression or torture.
But this is basic like 101 knowledge for the police, right? I assume every police would have learned the basic ethics of how to deal with criminals or suspects.
Well, it's sometimes it's investigation. It takes surveillance, investigation, forensic, fingerprint. All this takes time and effort. You need to all this, a lot of work for each case.
So they just want a quick job.
Sometimes just easier to just get a confession from the from the alleged thief or alleged murderer or alleged robber. Just get a confession from this person, and then he will bring you to the scene of crime and confess, etc., etc. So it's a shortcut work. So instead of the real hard work of police investigation. Of course, as I said, it's not a generalized statement against the police, but I'm saying that in some of the circumstances that have led to death in custody, for example, case of Coogan, there was a case of luxury cars being stolen, so there was a lot of pressure on the police to solve all this crime, and Coogan was the person suspected being part of the syndicate. So in order for them to solve the crime, so somehow rather they thought it's a good idea to just beat him to death.
But let's just say hypothetically someone does get arrested and they know their rights and everything, but if they start getting beaten by the police, is there anything that they can do?
Well, basically once you're under detention, you are quite vulnerable. So as I can tell you from my own experience. But as I said, it's always good to have a lawyer or families who knows that you're in trouble and that you are in this particular location. So what happened is, the idea is that to create an awareness to the police. For example, if let's say you're being arrested, so your family members, your partner or your lawyer or somebody, a friend, must immediately contact the investigation officer. Basically put on record that we have lawyers acting for you, and therefore we are watching what you are doing. So I think it's always good to put the police on guard that there are people outside observing and monitoring what they are doing, and they should come to try to see him or her as much as possible while he's under detention, so to make sure that he or she is not is.
But why can't this be part of the process or the ethics? Like whenever investigation is undergoing, when police needed people to interrogate, it should be already under the radar of lawyers or whoever that is supposed to be independently in charge on this matter.
As in the police call the lawyer and say.
As in like, perhaps the police call the lawyer or something in between where both parties would know like the investigation is being done currently.
Well, most people cannot afford lawyers. So you girls are lucky that because you know me. So if you get in trouble, you can call me. But most people cannot afford lawyers. I mean, especially from the lower class, as I said. And of course, if somebody from lower class is being arrested, so likewise the families and their friends would mostly be from the same category. So most of the time the police might not spend too much time, might not care what they have to say. So hence the like for example this Chandran who died in custody last year or something, which was recently, the coroner, to the much to his credit, found that the police had been negligent in not allowing him to get his medication while in custody. So although I don't know the exact facts of their background, but I would assume that they are they're not professionals, or they're not rich persons. So because the families pleaded with the police, and of course the person who died, the deceased, pleaded with the police that says, look, I'm elderly and I have medication, but the police just didn't give him his medication. So his death could have been entirely prevented if let's say they had very basic procedures which all police stations should observe. It is there, but just that because you come from a certain background, so they might not really listen to you.
Why do you think the government has not been proactive on this? Is it because it's not as sexy as the issue with Jakim or something like that?
Well, it's complicated in Malaysia because the police force in Malaysia is very powerful. Because unlike other countries, the Malaysian police force has been around during the British times, and it's a centralized police force. So meaning that there's one PDRM. Unlike other countries, it's decentralized. So here, the police force have been what is the best way of saying it? Well, basically they have protected the government. We have one government since independence. The police have protected the government, and the government have always protected the police. So every time there is a high-profile death in custody, for example, in other countries, then the politicians, the government
put the blame on the
would want an investigation. They want accountability. They want heads to roll. But in Malaysia, that's rarely the case. Most of the time, the government ministers, politicians would keep quiet, and they will not say anything. I would say that they will even go to the extent of protecting the police. So here in Malaysia, it's only the opposition, NGOs and lawyers who would raise the issue of police accountability. But of course, in some cases whereby because of the high-profile nature of the death in custody, there have been some half-hearted measures done by the authorities. But I would say that they're not very serious in actually doing anything whereby whereby death in custody could actually be prevented.
So if you were to tell the police forces as a whole, like how they can reform the police force, are they through the government or through themselves? What kind of reforms that you hope can take place in Malaysia? To prevent.
The main mode of reform, I think is very clear, which I think everyone has agreed over the past 10 years, is the IPCMC, the Independent Police Complaints Commission. So this was the main recommendation made by the Royal Commission of Inquiry, set up I think it's 2004 or 2003.
Wait, what is it exactly?
Well, it's an external mechanism whereby, because as I said earlier, the part of the problem is because the investigation is done by the police themselves. So if you have an external mechanism to look into complaints against the police, whereby investigation, whereby there is a separate mechanism, a separate budget, a separate personnel, or as much as possible to be independent from the police, to actually investigate complaints against the police. It can be anything, from corruption, but of course to our main concern would be in terms of.
But this is more of a preventive mechanism. But what about when you are already in custody and you need to ensure that the police won't kill you in the middle of the custody? Would the independent commission be able to do so?
Well, currently, impunity still happens because people get away with it. There are rules and procedures. There are standard operating procedures for the police how to treat detainees. For example, like as I said, medication. If when someone is under detention, medication should be given, and there are procedures for it, but it is not being complied with. So what happens is, if you have an IPCMC, you could actually lodge a complaint with IPCMC, and technically, on paper, if the IPCMC is independent and professional and competent, they can actually investigate the police personnel involved, why medication was not given to this detainee, and then action can be taken. They can recommend whether this person is charged, this person is demoted, or this person is being transferred out. So currently there is some internal disciplinary procedure that happen, but it's very opaque. Nobody knows about it. So we would say that it's not independent because it's still done by the police themselves. So technically the IPCMC would be able to solve the disciplinary problems, and of course, if they do commit crimes, like I said, if they were to beat somebody or kill somebody in custody, then in the course of investigation, then they can recommend that these persons be charged. So then in the long run, we hope that because there is now a very competent independent mechanism as an oversight body, then everybody would fall in place. Then the police would think twice before beating someone.
The recommendation was made 10 years ago, which is actually a long time. But were there any politician that actually raised this in the parliament or tried to make this particular recommendation put into practice?
Well, as far as the opposition is concerned, everyone's very clear. The IPCMC is needed. The same goes for the Bar Council. The same goes for NGOs in Malaysia. But unfortunately, in order for you to be able to do anything in Malaysia, the government has to support it. But unfortunately, the government has not been able to. They don't have the political will to actually push the issue because the police themselves have objected to it. So,
what was the feedback from the police themselves? Well,
the police felt that they have been singled out because they are saying that other public bodies, for example, prisons, RELA, they have been, they have not. Well, they have done illegal things under the law, but they felt that they have been singled out. And they have recommended something called EAIC, which is a sham. It is still in existence, but there's no budget. There's hardly any personnel. It's something that human rights organizations like us, we don't take seriously. Because
what is EMIC?
EAIC. I'm sorry, I just can't because we don't take them seriously. But I just know EAIC.
But what exactly they do?
Well, it's supposed to be like IPCMC, but it covers much more government agencies. But as I said, it's so stretched so widely, and there's hardly any investigators. So it is.
But is the system independent according to what they propose?
Well, technically it is, but there's no power. They don't have power. They don't have resources. They don't have they don't have the support. It is there, but no one takes the EIC seriously.
Okay. We'll take another short break. When we return, we will discuss more with Eric Paulsen on death in custody.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And we are at our last segment of today's Durian Heat on the issue relating to death in custody with Eric Paulsen here, the Executive Director of Lawyers from Liberty. We talk about the solution which you suggested, having that independent commission earlier. But in terms of the way forward, when it comes to what ordinary people can do, the civil society, the public, and perhaps also the victim's family, what can be immediately done, or at least awareness for the long term in terms of addressing this issue? Because I think, from my perspective, what is the biggest problem here is we do not know how large, in terms of the extent, the police can do to us as ordinary citizen. Like, let's say, what if we are being put into custody today? What is our right? I mean, which organization that we can voice our concern if we are scared we might end up dead there?
Well, the police have a lot of powers because our criminal procedure code, it's more than 100 years old. Of course, it has been amended over time, but it is how should I say? It is still a lot of powers given to the police. So basically, if you are being arrested for a crime, the police have 24 hours complete the initial investigation. But most of the time, investigation cannot be completed within 24 hours. They would need to go to the magistrates to get a remand order. So depending on the offence that they suspect you, then they might be able to get 3 days or 4 days remand, or maybe a week remand order against you. During this time, if you are being remanded further, then basically you are still under investigation and you are under detention. So you are very vulnerable. So during this period of time, I would encourage family members of the person who have been arrested to actually to as far as possible to get a lawyer. And the family members themselves must always keep in touch with the police to try to see the person arrested while in custody, because they need to basically inform the police that they are observing what they are doing, and they would like to make sure that the person who has been detained is in good health, in good condition.
Just curious, it happened to both men and women, or just men usually?
Well, mostly the death in custody happened to men.
Okay.
Women very rarely. I can't remember the last time it happened. So both of you are safe.
That's good to know.
Good to know. So what can civil society do, or at least the public, to raise awareness about this? Because I don't think this is a topic that people usually would talk about. I mean, especially within the Malay community, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, yeah. I mean, they have to take it seriously in the sense that even though they might want to put the episode behind them, no one should die in police custody, as I've said. So they should demand justice. They should, of course, unless there is clearly no foul play. So, for example, if somebody there's a reason for them, valid reason for the person to die, then if there's no fault of the police, then it's fine. But as I said, if somebody who is young, who's in good health, suddenly there is no other reason than he just dropped dead in the police station, then obviously the circumstances are very suspicious. And of course, if there are bruises, there are signs, etc., then of course it is very suspicious. So sometimes it could be a situation of neglect. Like if you have a medical condition, medicines were not given to you. So I think the family members must take it seriously to say that even though it's happened to my family member, I want this to stop here, and that I would like to prevent further death in custody that might happen to other people. So because every time they raise this issue with the assistance of lawyers and NGOs, and there are some press who is very keen to take up this issue, it does make a difference, because I think, as I said, over the last 10 years or so, the police have been much more careful. They as far as possible, they would follow the procedure in terms of treatment of detainees, but still, nonetheless, it's not sufficient because people still die in custody.
A majority of them are in Penang, right?
Yeah, that is a very strange thing. I think it's disproportionate. Last year especially, it's quite disproportionate. Quite a number of detainees die in Penang compared to other states. So I'm not sure what is the reason. I mean, it is not really difficult to keep somebody alive while in detention. So, but somehow or other, the Penang police force have not been able to do so.
Has the state government have any power to at least monitor the situation?
From what I understand, the state government is putting the pressure on the Penang police force to basically tell them to improve their conduct and to make sure that such deaths do not happen. But as I said, unfortunately the police force in Malaysia is centralized, so they are answerable to Bukit Aman in KL, and they're answerable to the federal government. So the state government in Penang really do not have any say in how the police force is being run, which is unfortunately the case, because if power is decentralized, then the probability of abuse of power, the probability of cover up is normally much lesser, because then the power is it is spread out instead of being concentrated in KL.
Then you have more people to blame as well. But another interesting point that I wish to highlight is, what about migrant workers? I mean, they are even more vulnerable than our local people.
Yes.
Are they part of a larger statistic as well within death in custody?
Certainly. I don't have the stats now in terms
of percentage.
But certainly migrants, they do die more frequently. It might not be in police station, but certainly in detention centers, because the situation in the detention centers for foreigners is much worse than in prison, because detention centers around Malaysia, it is designed in such a way that it is not how should I say, it is designed in such a way whereby it is designed to punish, in the sense that it's not a comfortable stay. And it's supposed to be a temporary stay. So that is the idea behind it. So compared to prison, which is supposed to be more of a permanent stay. So in statistics vary, yeah. So from time to time, different organization, different ministry give different statistics, but certainly migrants in detention centers, when they die, there's very little news, because first of all, their family members are not here. If the person dies, no one brings it up, unless the authorities were to announce it. Nobody would know. So even if their family members are here, most of them are undocumented, so they are not able to come forward. They're not able to go to authorities and demand justice.
Even the media doesn't really cover that much.
The media, part of it is because of as I said, because of there is a lack of avenue whereby the issue can be raised. Because if a death in custody were to happen to a Malaysian, their family members, there are lawyers who can speak on their behalf. So if a migrant or refugee were to die in detention, there's nobody that can speak for them. Because the family members would be in hiding. The family members, most of them would be undocumented. So the family members would not be able to contact lawyers, or would not be able to contact NGOs. Even if they do, the family members would not sit with the lawyers to raise the issue, because they are in a very vulnerable position. So most of the time, their deaths go unpublished, and there's no accountability. That's very clear.
So before we end our show, any last comments related to death in custody? What do you think we can do as a person, as individuals in Malaysia for now, at least to address the immediate problem related to death in custody?
Well, it's not that difficult to keep somebody alive, while in police custody. You might think that this will not happen to you, because you don't commit crimes, and the police will not arrest you. But you just never know. It might not happen to you personally, but it can happen to your friend. It can happen to a colleague. And I think it's the best interest for all Malaysians that our police force conforms to international standard of policing, and that we want our police force to be as modern as possible, as accountable as possible, as transparent as possible, and therefore I would urge all Malaysians to actually look into such cases seriously, and basically demand that the government enact, for example, as I said, the IPCMC, because that's the only way forward.